One, two, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Hey everybody, it's Sam Jacobs. Welcome to the Sales Hacker Podcast. We are excited today to bring you an interview with one of the leading financial entrepreneurs and just general entrepreneurs in Canada, a guy named Ilan Jacobson that started a company called Firepower Capital. Firepower does M&A advisory work, they do venture debt investing, they do private equity investing, and really any kinds of services that growth companies in really all over the world, but concentrated in Canada, any kind of services those companies need, Ilan's company can provide it. And it's a wide-ranging discussion. We talk about authenticity. We talk about what makes great teams great and what great leaders do to drive growth in their company. So really good conversation. Now, before we get there, we want to thank our two sponsors. This episode is brought to you by Loopio. If RFPs are slowing down your sales team, you got to check out Loopio. It's the leading RFP response software trusted by more than 800 high-performing organizations across North America. They automate the tedious parts of the response process. And man, it does get tedious, like filling in the right answers and formatting documents so that you can finish RFPs in hours instead of days. So see how Loopio can help you with your next RFP. Go to loopio.com/saleshacker to get a personal walkthrough today. Now, our second sponsor, you know them, you love them, you worship them, you celebrate them. Our second sponsor is Outreach, the #1 sales engagement platform. Outreach revolutionizes customer engagement by moving away from siloed conversations to a streamlined and customer-centric journey. Leveraging the next generation of artificial intelligence, the platform allows sales reps to deliver consistent, relevant, responsible communication for each prospect every time, enabling personalization at scale previously unthinkable. You never thought it. You thought, this kind of personalization, it's not possible. I can't even contemplate it. I can't think about it. But it's here now. It's here now. But before it was unthinkable, but now it's here. So think about that. Check them out at www.outreach.io. Without further ado, it is time to listen to my interview with Ilan Jacobson. Hi, everybody. It's Sam Jacobs. Welcome to the Sales Hacker Podcast. Today on the show, we've got Ilan Jacobson. Ilan is the founding partner and CEO of Firepower Capital, and he's transformed the firm from a small 4-person family office into a 40-plus strong M&A advisory and private capital powerhouse. He leads Firepower Capital in all its endeavors, setting its strategic direction, providing top-level guidance on key transactions, and assessing new direct investments for Firepower Capital's private capital funds. Under his leadership, it's become one of the leading investors and M&A advisory firms in Canada. And Firepower invests in Canada's entrepreneurs by financing their growth directly with venture debt or private equity, helping them complete their most critical transactions. Ilan, welcome to the show.
Sam, thank you for having me.
We're excited to have you. So we like to start with a baseball card, which is really a way of contextualizing your expertise and understanding why should we be listening to this very important person. So tell us in your words. I read a long bio, but from your perspective, first, tell us, what does Firepower Capital do? Who are you? What do you do?
Sure. I guess we are the brand that we hope entrepreneurs think about when they're going through something transformative, whether it be raising money, whether it be looking to buy a business, whether it be looking to sell their company, whatever it may be. We want them to think about us as the name that's there to support them. So I guess we do quite a few things in the financial ecosystem.
How long have you been doing it? Tell us a little bit about the history of the firm, and then from there, we can segue into your background.
Yeah, sure. So I started in 2009. I was young and dumb and didn't know I probably shouldn't start something like that right after the 2008 crisis. But I guess naivety is a good thing in hindsight. And we've grown steadily since that inception.
What's your background? How did you come to the idea? And did you start with capital as a fund? Did you start as an advisory firm? What were the origins? A lot of times, yeah.
I'll give you that. I mean, I have a pretty eclectic background. I have a degree in genetics. I wanted to be a doctor pretty much my whole life. Got into medical school, and then had the only Jewish parents probably on planet Earth that begged me not to go to medical school. So
they wanted you to go to law school instead.
No, they wanted me to do my MBA, and I'm the eldest of 4. My father's in business, and they wanted to know at least something would happen to them that I would be able to do something with the family's assets. So landed up doing my MBA, not going to medical school, and I started my career actually in venture capital, specifically in SaaS venture capital. So I know that the majority of the people that you interview on this podcast are kind of from the SaaS world, and that is my history as well, just by happenstance. And then realized fairly early on that I wasn't equipped to work for others, and landed up starting Firepower. And essentially, at the beginning, I partnered with a fellow by the name of Mike Stein. Mike is the founder and chairman of Cap REIT, which is close to a $10 billion REIT on the TSX. And I landed up approaching him and basically, unbeknownst to me, not knowing the terminology, starting a bit of a family office and looking at new opportunities for him. I had the hustle. I was 26 years old at the time. And again, dumb and naive. And he had capital that he had accumulated, and it was a good match. So landed up looking for opportunities for him. Got bored over the last over a couple of years doing a deal or two a year, and then got into advisory, and then subsequently directly into asset management through our private credit product. And actually, as of this morning, we just announced our new private equity fund that we raised.
Oh, congratulations. So in terms of direct investments, Firepower, it's debt, it's venture debt, is that right? And now private equity with your new fund?
Exactly. I call it gap debt. We've actually trademarked that term because venture debt, I think, implies different things to different people. For us, we like to deploy capital into growth stage companies where they don't want to raise equity, and sometimes it's in lieu of a Series A, sometimes it's to delay a Series A. And I guess what's unique about our product is we don't only have to look at sponsor-backed companies. We're more than happy to look at organically grown, non-sponsored businesses.
Interesting. And so how's it, and the emphasis, in a world where capital is, plentiful, and where you are competing on these deals across any number of, asset classes and company sizes and shapes and industries, for you, what's the differentiator? Is it specialization on Canada? Is it something else? When you think about what makes Firepower special, what is it?
Yeah, I would say yes. In Canada, there's probably less competition in this particular asset class than the U.S., but I'd say our competitive advantage overall, and I don't care what business unit I'm talking about, is that we are entrepreneurs turned bankers, not the other way around. So, I mean, I consider myself a professional opportunist. I'm far from and by the way, I stole that directly from Sam Zell, so I want to give credit where credit's due. I read his book called "Am I Being Too Subtle?" and I just loved the definition of what he considered himself, because I've always struggled with the term entrepreneur. I've always struggled with a bunch of different terms, and I love the idea of the professional opportunist. But yeah, I would say that we come at the market with an entrepreneurial mindset, because I am one, and I think that helps us have better conversations. Although we sit as a lender in many circumstances, we want to act like a partner, because our belief is the higher the valuation of a business, and the more robust the equity valuation, the more secure our debt is. So I think it's self-serving in a lot of ways, but it's also a lot of fun. I love entrepreneurs. It's what gets me going. It's why I do what I do. Is I love that energy.
And these are typically venture scale companies, or companies that aspire to be venture scale?
I wouldn't say always. I think that there's a lot of businesses. I'd say 60% of our portfolio is tech, and I think when people hear tech, they always assume that every tech company is, venture, has venture aspirations. But the reality is that there's a lot of homegrown tech companies doing 5 to 10 to 15 million in ARR that are just fantastic, organically grown businesses that don't have those aspirations. And, in lieu of bringing in equity partners, have looked to us to become a debt partner to help them with their more, I would say, maybe conservative growth plans, considering, they're not looking to raise the $100 million Series Bs, and scaling the way that you hear on TechCrunch and Crunchbase, etc.
Are there circumstances where they're using your financing to provide themselves liquidity, or bundling it into basically where the money that you're investing might not go into the balance sheet, but might go into the pockets of early shareholders? Is that something that happens?
Absolutely. I'm more than happy to look at dividend recaps. I'm not the believer. For whatever reason, a lot of lenders hate the idea of money leaving the balance sheet. If a company's valuable and someone's worked their ass off, I mean, I've never understood why people aren't okay with providing capital for that reason. I firmly think that unfortunately a lot of jealousy exists, and there's this weird jealousy dynamic that happens between lenders and entrepreneurs. And for me, I love looking at success stories. I've never viewed life through the lens of for them to win, I somehow lose. I think that I think the more people win, the better off we all are.
I completely agree. So you've been doing this, as you said, right, since 2009. So 11 years,
Mm-hmm.
you've probably been thinking about what makes companies great for longer than that. And when you look at success stories for yourself, when you look at the great investments that you've made, what do you think are the common traits that drive success in a company?
So I'm going to be cliche at first because it's just factual. It's the person first. I mean, it's the people, the management team. That's the number one. But that's obvious, and that's what everyone says. So I'm actually going to switch gears. Um, I maybe because of my genetics background, I always view investment opportunities through the lens somehow of genetics. So I'll give you a good example. I invested in the first axe throwing company in planet Earth that actually started in Toronto. It started in a backyard in 2006. I invested when they had one location in 2014, and people looked at me like I was absolutely insane when I invested in that. But the reality is, I have some core theses in my brain that kind of relate to genetics, and the axe throwing business hit on one of them, which is there are things in our DNA that we are not aware of and that drive a lot of our behavior. I know when we spoke last, Sam, we spoke about the concept of free will, and I'm a big believer that a lot of what we do is just pattern behavior based in our DNA. I think I mentioned to you that I'm a massive fan of Dana White, and Dana White says, putting a basketball in a net means something because you said it means something. Kicking a soccer ball into a soccer net means something because you say it means something. Punching someone in the face always means something. It's in our DNA. We like it and we get it. And when I threw that first axe, I had that exact same reaction. I knew that it lit something up in my brain that was vestigial in nature. It's probably the first time we ever killed an animal was we threw something sharp at it. I guarantee it. And when I was there viewing people around me, I was amazed at like this glimmer in the eye that I saw. And that's a really it's a story that you can kind of picture. But even when I'm looking at a software company, I'm thinking about things like, does this product actually need to exist? Right? Do people actually want it? Or are they just creating have they found a little niche, and until it gets disrupted, there's an opportunity. So I view things through an equity mindset before I ever look at the financials. I don't care that the company's doing $20 million in ARR if I don't believe in their underlying business. And I think a lot of people make a mistake by getting lost in numbers and not taking a step back and actually thinking about whether a business should exist.
And your point is, one of your theses is that there are patterns of behavior that are endemic and systemic to us, sometimes that we may not be even aware of. And, like you said, we killed the first animal, maybe throwing something sharp. This axe throwing business spoke to a more primitive part of your brain, perhaps, that sort of lit up when you. So my question is, do you worry? I mean, our primitive selves, we're not particularly sophisticated or civilized. Do you worry about kind of like, I don't know, late stage moral implications of trying to trigger some kind of primitive response in somebody that may not be good for society?
Yeah, look, I think that anything that I get involved with is always driven by morals and ethics first and foremost. I mean, I have two kids that I want to go home to and, look them in the eye and be proud of the things that I do. So absolutely, I wouldn't want to manipulate a vestigial DNA component in an individual that is counterproductive to their health or, societal health. So yeah, I think it matters for sure. But I think that anyone who wants to build a long career should be focused on that first and foremost, because I think takes you a lifetime to build a good reputation and an instant in time to lose it. So I'm extremely mindful of that, and would be very against an investment that took advantage of weakness, and it was a zero sum game. I'm not into investments like that.
And your investments, are they specifically focused on Canada, or they can be anywhere, but you are
No,
just one of Canada's leading firms?
yeah, they could be anywhere. We're more than happy to look at international opportunities. Business that we actually bought about 2 years ago and just subsequently sold was about 50-50 Canada and US.
Huh.
Our business in the axe throwing company is now probably majority US.
Yeah, I've thrown an axe in Brooklyn. Maybe it was related. Maybe you somehow made money off of that. I hope so.
No, we're not in Brooklyn, but we know those operators.
So you mentioned, great management teams, people that really understand whether a product needs to exist. But beyond that, you've talked to me about the importance of self-awareness, and that the lack of self-awareness is a Achilles heel for a lot of people. Talk a little bit more about qualities that you think make great management teams and great entrepreneurs.
Yeah, okay, sure. So I think first and foremost is a genuine care for others. I feel like the best leaders actually care. I think that the best leaders that I've met are in a lot of ways like philosophers. They're genuinely inquisitive about why things are the way they are. I meet some entrepreneurs, and it's very, I guess, engineering based in the way they think, and it's like, there's supply and demand, and it's as simple as that. I'm not a huge fan. I'm not to say that engineers can't be incredible entrepreneurs, but because they can. But I'm not a huge fan of pure analytics. I really think that the best entrepreneurs that I've met have this unexplained feel. And I look for that, and I like having conversations about things that aren't business related. I want to know their thoughts about existential anxiety. I want to know their thoughts about things that are just, you know that require some form of like deep thinking, some creative, a creative mindset. Because I think that most companies have to pivot numerous times, and it's those creative, abstract thinkers that typically win. I also think that people that are driven by like the pure capitalistic side of business and don't have a higher reason for doing what they do are, again, I don't find that to be a pattern of success in investing. Usually, those that I invest in that have been successful are truly passionate, and I think when you spend time with individuals, you get a good sense of people that are really passionate versus others that are just really hardworking, because those are very different things in my opinion.
Yeah, makes a lot of sense. And sometimes I think it's a function of trying to find what people's passion is, and then sometimes they haven't been trained. I think a lot of people lack the tools to really self-diagnose what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, and as a consequence, what they're passionate about.
Completely, and to be honest with you, it's I think it has a huge it's hugely to do with ego. Ego is there to protect people, right? I like it would be very difficult to live your life without an ego, because I don't think people fully understand the definition of ego. But you need an ego to prevent yourself from falling into an existential crisis, as an example. But the ego also helps protect you from feeling vulnerable, from feeling upset and sad. And when you think about your weaknesses, I think a lot of people fall into the trap of their ego kind of protecting themselves from going deeper into exploring the things that are holding them back. And I think it's a really important process to go through and really look yourself in the mirror and be comfortable with the idea that you don't have to be perfect. I think that once you get comfortable with that idea, it's an incredibly freeing feeling. For me, I say this all the time. I literally would need 2 minutes to tell you my strengths, and we could spend the next 2 weeks about me telling you what my weaknesses are. And I'm super proud of that, because I think that that's one of my strengths, is that real hyper exaggerated self-awareness and authenticity.
What do you think? What are your weaknesses?
Oh my God. Do you have 2 weeks, Sam?
I have a few minutes.
Yeah. I'm a horrible executor. I don't.
That's a very uncommon trait for an entrepreneur.
Yeah, no, I'm bad. Like I require really strong executors around me. I have incredible vision, and I can see the puzzle pieces as good as anyone else I know. But I have a really hard time seeing the trees at points. I'm also super ADD, so the idea of sitting at a desk, working 5 hours on a spreadsheet, like there's just no effing way I could do that. I mean, I don't care how much Ritalin you give me, it's just not going to happen. So my right hand man, who has been with me since 2014, is a rocket scientist from Princeton, EMBA from Kellogg. Everything that he is good at, I am bad at. Everything that I am good at, he is bad at. But yeah, no. So I'm a bad executor. I think that I'm not a great manager either. I do really well with senior executives, but I kind of lack patience for people that can't keep up, and I'm aware of that. So I got to be very careful about not getting frustrated. I would say that I like control, and that definitely is a weakness. I think that a lot of entrepreneurs think they're right, and I could tell you the biggest transition I've gone through in my career is the adaptation to giving up control, because you cannot scale a business without it. Like, you have to be willing to give up control. And until I got more and more comfortable, and it's something I work on all the time, my business would have never scaled. It's just impossible.
Yeah, being bad at execution and not giving up control, those are two.
Yeah,
That's a bad combination.
absolutely. Absolutely.
Do you believe, I don't mean to lead the witness, but and maybe I'm not sure if we talked about this, but I've gotten the same set of constructive criticism / weaknesses / things that I'm not good at for, 20 years. And I've come to basically say to myself that I'm not sure I believe in the idea that I'm going to really radically change my personality or my behavior at this point. What I'm really going to try and do is find situations where I can double down on my strengths and accentuate my strengths and maybe diminish my weaknesses, but not necessarily change my behavior to modify my weaknesses. Is that how you approach? It sounds like it might be, given that you're saying, these are things I'm not good at. And it doesn't sound like you're trying to be good at them. It sounds like you're just trying to understand what you are good at and what you're not good at.
I'm not trying to be good at them at all. I think that the second you spend time outside of things that are holding you back from being successful, but I honestly believe that if you acknowledge your weaknesses and you find ways and you find people to work with that can counter those weaknesses, the idea of working on your weaknesses is honestly silly to me. And I hear people prepare for an interview and people ask, what are your three weaknesses? I think it's a ridiculous question, because I can't sing, I can't dance, I can't do that, but that's not what you're hiring me for. And I always say, well-rounded people are fucking boring. I can't stand well-rounded people. I like I like someone who's excellent at something. I mean, you look at LeBron James or Michael Jordan. I mean, that's top of mind because of the NBA Finals. You think that they're well-rounded? No, I doubt Michael Jordan and LeBron James could do their own taxes, but they sure as hell have a jump shot, and I guarantee they work on that. I am a big believer that you double down on your strengths, because a weakness inherent in that, the definition of weakness is that it doesn't come naturally to you. So I'm going to go work on something that doesn't come naturally to me, that comes naturally to someone else. Like, that seems so counterproductive versus doubling down, like you say, on something that I naturally gravitate towards, that I really enjoy, that I'm really good, and getting even better at it. That seems like a much better use of my time.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. The challenge is, if you're not exceptional at something, or if the place that you want to get to from a career perspective requires certain things that you are not good at. And then sometimes, you and I have the benefit, luxury, and privilege of running our own companies. But for people that aren't in that situation, there's this challenge of, what if I'm not good at the things that I need to be good at in order to get where I want to go?
Yeah, I want to qualify my advice, because my advice you should throw out the window if you want to be a career banker, as an example. I would be fired from any real institution in about 5 seconds. I don't know how to play the political game. So, and quite frankly, my wife's a social worker. She has a career in social work that relies on you playing the political game and working on weaknesses and all those sorts of things. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's fantastic. my advice is not for those individuals. My advice is for people that kind of want to follow, I guess, a similar career path to yourself or myself, and salespeople in general, because I think that salespeople are a different breed. I don't think salespeople need to be worried about being well rounded. But yeah, to your point, to those individuals that are sitting there saying, "Yeah, but that's bad advice for me," that's very possible. It may be very bad advice for you, because I don't think that there's like a one brush advice for all people.
I agree with that. Let me, we're going to shift topics, maybe slightly, but we're in a global pandemic now. The equity capital, is cheap. Maybe that's a good thing. But to the point, right? You're an investor. Investment fundamentally, I think, is about optimism, right? You just raised a fund. You're going to invest that money because you believe that it's going to grow, and because the companies that you own or invest in are going to generate more value. And yet, there's a lot of so. How do you think about kind of like the current geopolitical situation? Climate change on the rise, in the construct of the fact that you're also an optimist and you're also looking for investments. I guess the question is sort of like, what's your level? What's your relative optimism about the human race, about the situation we're in right now, given the global pandemic, and what do you see as the future, given that I would imagine that it is optimistic?
Yeah, I guess maybe because I am an optimist, I believe in the human spirit. I don't want to downplay the realness of global warming as an example. I don't want to downplay the realness of this pandemic, but I do think, fortunately or unfortunately, humans are reliably patterns, creatures of habit. I do believe the world will go back to a normalcy that will be far more normal than people think it's going to be. Do I think that we're going to have lasting change because of this pandemic, as an example? I really do. I think that there's going to be some patterns of behavior that change, hopefully for the good, more than the bad, obviously. But we're still humans, and I bet you 5 years from now, the world will look a lot like it did a year ago. Hopefully we do double down on investing in the real threat of global warming. But I do think that will happen naturally as, it becomes more capitalistic and profitable to do so. Because I do think it's going to be profitable to invest in clean tech, as an example. So I don't really worry about that.
So are you not, I mean, I tend to share your views, but just to state them, are you not worried about, or are you, it's not that you're not worried about the ice caps melting, the permafrost melting and releasing more greenhouse gases, but your point of view is that you believe in the human race's ability to counter
Yeah,
these challenges.
I do. And like, I also think that, like, if anything, we're fucked. Nature's going to be fine. Like you give it a billion years, it'll, we could be long gone and it'll heal itself. So like, I never worry about the earth, right? I mean, I worry about the inhabitableness of the earth. But if we shoot ourselves in the foot and, cause a situation where, the earth can only support half of the population, well, guess what? We'll have more pandemics. We'll have more earthquakes. We'll have more of this. And it is what it is. Like, I think that anything that we get from it, we deserve in a lot of ways. But I do think that we got to be focused on it, but you can't push a string uphill. Like, I honestly, and maybe this is a lack of optimism, I honestly don't think a lot's going to change until it becomes profitable to do so. And of course, government policy can play a huge role in creating that profitability through, government incentives, tax breaks, things of that nature, which I'm a huge proponent of. But I think all I can do is on a daily basis focus on being the best version of myself. I try and not think about how to cure world hunger and the ice caps melting, because I think it's especially for someone with my type of brain, where if I get on the treadmill I'm pretty fucked. Like that treadmill could be very detrimental for me. So I try and keep the world as small as possible in my own head, because it's already too big.
Fair
when I
enough.
get going.
Fair enough. All right. A few more questions. So that I want to give you an opportunity to plug your new fund. So you just announced that you raised a fund. Is that right? New private equity fund. So
I did. Yep.
what, if I'm an entrepreneur listening, or tell us about your investment criteria. What kind of deals are you trying to do? What kind of companies are you looking for?
You know what? We call it Firepower's opportunistic fund because, to be honest with you, we want to have as little of a thesis as possible. At the end of the day, we're going to invest in tech, we're going to invest in non-tech, we're going to invest in minority, we're going to invest in majority. If it's a good idea and we can get our head around it, we can add value. I'd say the one thing that we are is we're not passive money. Our head of private equity is a fellow named Anthony Lipschitz. He was one of the senior guys who brought StubHub to Canada. uh, Through and through operator, not a finance guy. And people always ask me, like, why did you hire someone like that or bring on as a partner someone like that, you know, to run a PE fund? And I said, because I think that's where private equity gets it wrong. I think that at the end of the day, it's about being able to help operators operate. The finance stuff is in my opinion table stakes. Of course, you have to understand how to structure a transaction and how to use the appropriate amount of leverage. But it's those funds that can kind of dig in deeper and provide more value and actually be there side by side with an entrepreneur and help them grow their businesses that are going to generate outsized returns, especially now, because I agree with you, capital is a commodity and it's going to continue to be a commodity. So I believe there has to be some other edge. And I'm going to bet on our entrepreneurial spirit and our ability to operate and help operate over the table stakes that I consider as the financial engineering side of business.
And these are controlled transactions. You're buying companies, is that right?
For the most part, we will look at minority. 25% of our fund can be put into minority investments. I mean, if they come up, we will look at them. I mean, trust me, like I never thought if I told you my portfolio right now, I sure as hell did not think I'd be investing in an axe throwing company. And then the other
Until you
portfolio
felt the heft in your hand and you sent it through
yeah,
the air.
exactly. I mean, our other portfolio is a cybersecurity software business, a prop tech company, a home healthcare business. It's an installation of at-home internet satellite dishes. I mean, it's really all over the place. It's just we get involved in situations where we think we can add value with individuals that we really like, and we'll put our money where our mouth is when we have those situations.
I love it. Ilan, the last thing that we do is we like to kind of pay it forward a little bit and understand, you've mentioned a few people, but either mentors or great authors or thought leaders that you've found inspiration from, great books that you've read. There's no specific category. The category is content or human beings that you think we should know about because they've had an influence on you. So when I frame it in that way, what comes to mind?
I'd say the first person I mentioned in that book was Sam Zell. I really like Sam Zell. For those who haven't read his book, Am I Being Too Subtle? It's about being comfortable, being eccentric in a lot of ways. I think that a lot of people spend way too much time worrying about what others think of them. And I always tell people that are so concerned about what others are thinking about them, I say, I'll tell you what they're thinking. They're thinking about, what are people thinking about me? They're not thinking about you. So, being comfortable, being an eccentric, out of the box thinker is incredibly freeing. And forget about business, just to live a happy, fulfilled life. Getting to a point where you're comfortable in your own skin is one of the best things you can do for yourself. So I'd recommend that book. I've always enjoyed outsiders and people who think differently. Like I could tell you, one of the people who I read up the most about is Salvador Dali. I have Salvador Dali tattooed on the back of my leg. And if
Just
you,
the name Salvador Dali, or
oh
like
no,
some?
a whole painting of his.
Fair enough.
And if you saw my office, there's a huge mural of Salvador Dali in my office. And he has a quote where people asked him why he had made the statue of a lobster on a phone. And his response was, why not? And I love the simplicity of that response. And it goes back to that comfort in being eccentric and that comfort in not worrying about what people think of you. And, if they think you're a weirdo, it doesn't affect my life. So yeah, huge fan of art in general, Dali being one of them. And then on the business front, I'm a huge fan of Nelson Mandela. So read a lot about Nelson Mandela. Yeah, huge fan of Musk. I know that's kind of the standard, but and then I also mentioned Dana White. Massive fan of Dana White. But yeah, I can keep going.
No, those are good.
They're all kind of eccentric, out of the box. thinkers and comfortable in their own skin. I'd say the people that I really resonate with are those that are comfortable in their own skin.
Makes sense. Ilan, if folks are listening and they want to get in touch with you, maybe they're an entrepreneur that has a company that they want you to invest in, or they need some help, what's your preferred way of getting in touch?
Email me, ijacobson@firepowercapital.com. Very
Wonderful.
easy.
Ilan, thanks so much for being on the Sales Hacker podcast. We will talk to you on Friday for Friday Fundamentals.
Thank you very much, Sam.
Hey everybody, Sam's Corner. Sam Jacobs, your host of the Sales Hacker podcast, the thing you are currently listening to, founder of Revenue Collective and a new community called Operations Collective. Shh, don't tell anyone. I love that conversation. Why? Because Ilan's an authentic human being. I think that's, there's maybe two big takeaways that maybe you can think about. The first is, and this, if you listen to the episode with John Mark Shaw, if you listen to this journey that I've been on over the last couple of years, the thing that your goal in life is to keep discovering and unearthing who you are and holding things up to the light and figuring out when they are in harmony, when they align, when it is true, and when they are discordant, when they are not true. And that sounds like gobbledygook, but it's not gobbledygook. Here's what it means. It means that authenticity is what drives success. Passion beyond material concerns is what drives success. You want to make a lot of money, you have to be passionate. So you have to figure out, what are you passionate about and who are you at your core? And that is a process of self-awareness and self-discovery that takes some time for many people. But if you could do that, then you can be that special kind of person. And the people that have the most power in the world, like, as Ilan mentioned, besides Ilan himself, Elon Musk and Salvador Dali and Steve Jobs, may he rest in peace. Those are people that were comfortable with the fact that you might not like them. They were people that were comfortable with the fact that they were going to do things differently because they believed in them, and they had a process for determining that. So that's a long way of saying authenticity, who you really are. That is a key driver, because if you can align the world, what you're doing every day, the outside with the inside of who you are, and you can be in alignment with the universe that way, you can accelerate your growth, you can accelerate trajectory. So that's important. And correspondingly, as we talked about, think about, what are your weaknesses, what are your gaps? And instead of trying to change your weaknesses, change your gaps, become good at the things that you suck at, what would happen if you just became absolutely amazing at the things that you're just pretty good at? And I think that's a lesson that it was very difficult for me to learn. I used to get feedback at work. I'm very moody. Sam's happy when the company's doing well, and he's not so happy when the company's not doing well. And it's not really about not being moody, although I guess I could take, medicine and pills for maybe to numb myself out and be more steady. But it's really more about like, well, what was it that was making me moody? And could I align my work in a way that brought me more consistent daily joy? And so anyway, that's my thoughts. Before we go, I hope you're noodling on it. Are you noodling? If you're noodling, then you're doing the right thing. Before we go, we want to thank our two sponsors. This episode was brought to you by Loopio. If your team responds to RFPs, you need to try Loopio's intelligent platform. It helps hundreds of sales teams answer RFPs in hours instead of days. Sign up for a personal walkthrough of Loopio today. Your sales team will thank you. Trust us. Go to loopio.com/saleshacker. Of course, our second sponsor is Outreach. They are revolutionizing customer engagement by making personalization at scale that you previously couldn't even think about. It was unthinkable, and now it's thinkable. Not only is it thinkable, it's possible, it's here, it's happening. Go to www.outreach.io. If you want to reach out to me, you can. LinkedIn.com/Sam F. Jacobs. If you want to apply to Revenue Collective, go to revenuecollective.com, click apply now. We've got a new group membership option. We call it Revenue Collective for Teams. That includes private onboarding. It includes customized consulting and access to experts for your team so that you can accelerate their growth trajectory. It's really quite cool, actually. And that's that. And then today is, if I'm not mistaken, is Tuesday, November 3rd. I hope you voted. If you're an American citizen, I don't care who you voted for. I just hope you voted. Let's participate in this democracy, right? I think democracy is important. Anyway, I'm rambling. I'll talk to you next time, folks. I love you.